Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Kraven the Hunter. My name is Shahbaz, and joining alongside me today is Anthony. Anthony, how are you doing today, man?
I come to kill little spiders.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you're definitely doing a much better Kraven than what we're about to talk about. And if you're wondering right now, where is Daniel? I am sorry to say, but it looks like Kraven got to him. I think he was the prey. And Kraven got to him, tore him to shreds, as I recall. Isn't that correct, Anthony?
We were going to the screening and we just passed by a forest and we just threw him out.
The great forest of Toronto.
Fend for yourself.
We gave him just a stick and a piece of gum, and we were like, "Listen, man, you got this." And I haven't heard from him yet, so probably dead.
Like Daniel would not survive, not even a millisecond in the forest. With even an ant,
we could have given him
whatever type of animal that's out there, a raccoon, a little beaver, he'd
gone instantly dead. And that's the price you pay when you don't join a review with the movie podcast. You immediately get thrown into the wolves, or in this case, ants that have gotten to him. And Kraven the Hunter definitely got to him as well. Of course, the movie we are talking about today is Kraven the Hunter. And if you're new here, we are the movie podcast. You can follow us at every single social platform out there. All the links are down below. You can also join our Discord where we talk about movies, and a lot of people from around the world have joined us there. We have a lot of great movie reviews and interviews coming out very, very soon. The Christmas time is coming as well. Holidays are setting in. People will be taking some time off. What a great thing to do than stay at home and just listen to episodes of the movie podcast. You probably have so many episodes to catch up on. And don't worry, we'll be off for a couple of weeks just to kind of reset ourselves. So stay at home, listen to a couple episodes, or listen to all the episodes you possibly can, because I think it's a great time. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, this is the most joyous time if you're the movie podcast, because we get a break. When it comes to that end of the year, I know a lot of people have that spare time. Listen to our episodes, go back and re-listen to some of those episodes. Maybe go listen to Madam Web. That movie started off January of 2023, and we're ending off 2024, and we're ending off with Kraven for this year. So it's interesting how those two are the beginning and end of this year.
I want to also give a huge thank you over to our friends over at Sony Pictures Canada for inviting us to come watch this movie. We got to see this today in IMAX, which is always a treat. I think anytime we get to see a movie in IMAX, it definitely ups the ante on the film and gives us a little bit more love than we love.
It depends. It depends on the film.
It depends.
We'll talk about it. It depends on the film.
Kraven the Hunter does star Aaron Taylor Johnson, Fred Hechinger, Russell Crowe, Ariana DeBose, Alessandro Nivola, and Christopher Abbott, and is directed by J.C. Chandor. We've actually had Ariana DeBose on our show and Alessandro Nivola, so very, very cool that when they pop up in movies that we get to see later down the road, we'd always be like, oh yeah, friend of the show, they're the friend of the show.
That's the first thing we said when we saw these two. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys have been on our show. It's interesting, just to like a surreal, like, oh, we're closer than a lot of people in this spot knows.
They were on set that day going, oh man, I just finished an interview with the movie podcast and it was awful. Yeah, I had a horrible time doing it.
It's true. No, it's true.
Kraven the Hunter will be available exclusively in theaters on December 13th. If you do go watch this movie and you listen to our review, please leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of the film and join our Discord as well. We will be probably getting into some spoilers here because it's really hard for this kind of a film, for this kind of a review, to not talk about spoilers. So if you really don't want to know anything about Kraven the Hunter, you want to go in as blind as possible, I'd say this is probably the best place to turn it off now, because we're going to be talking about some things about this movie that are definitely going to be spoiler-ish. So, Anthony, if you don't mind, can you please kick us off with your first reaction to Kraven the Hunter?
Man, where do I start? So, my reaction, and just getting into this, we knew that this movie wasn't going to be good going to it, because this screening happened after, the review embargo broke, and we thought, okay, this is going to be very similar to Madam Web. We're going to have some fun. I actually got excited. I'm like, I'm down to laugh with Shay, and I'm down to just embrace whatever is on the screen. And, we're watching it in IMAX, so we're going to watch it in this big, beautiful theater. And after watching this film, I didn't laugh. I didn't. I actually wanted to throw myself out of the theater because it is worse than I thought it would be. It is a movie that doesn't know who Kraven is. And no disrespect to J.C. Chandor. He's directed fantastic films, A Most Violent Year, Triple Frontier. Those are great. Those are good films I like to watch. But when it comes to Kraven and the subject matter of Kraven, he just didn't know what to do with this character. This character is all over the place. The story alone is very much a combobulated mess of things that are happening on screen. And the way it's presented to you, and especially when it comes to the editing, because as an editor, I notice these things like, oh, the flow doesn't work well. Like there's shots missing here and there, and it doesn't have that rhythm that you want a movie to have. And you're just shocked. Like, did you guys not have this movie, like you said, Shay, on a hard drive for the past 2 years? How can you think that this movie is what your end vision is? Like, it didn't make sense. Like, the ADR is bad, the storyline, the characters, the performances, everything that you want in a movie, it does horribly wrong. Like, and it's not bad in the sense of that, this is like the Room, where that's a bad film. This is just like, there's nothing happening on the screen where you care. You don't care about these characters. Even the people who are playing the characters don't even care about themselves. This Kraven the Hunter, who I guess they decided, let's make him a good guy, or this anti-hero, this trope that they love putting into Sony films. Let's make him this kind of good guy, but he does bad things sometimes character, but he just doesn't flow. And Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's a great actor, does not do well as Kraven. Like, unfortunately, he just doesn't. He just doesn't have the demeanor and presence on screen. And it's funny because we were talking about this in the car. The only person who was the real Kraven in this movie is Russell Crowe. And it's like, why aren't you giving me this character in Aaron Taylor Johnson's body? Why isn't it in Russell Crowe's character? And he's probably the best part of this movie. But an overall mess of a film.
It suffers from such an identity crisis. And Anthony, like you said, it's a messy movie. It's a movie that doesn't really seem to kind of know where it's going and what it's trying to tell you. And you have a movie that's about 2 hours and 7 minutes long. And to start from the beginning here, there is no after credit scene or mid credit scene. So if you do end up going to watch it, don't worry about having to stick all the way through, because there's something that comes after it. In fact, what would have been a mid credit scene and an after credit scene is kind of already tagged on to the end of the film, which means this film also kind of has multiple endings before the credits even start to roll. Like, right when you think, all right, we're cutting to black, credits going to come up, another scene emerges, and it's disconnected from what just previously took place. Cool. Cut to black again, another scene emerges. So the editing in this film, like you said, Anthony, is one of the biggest issues that kind of exists, because the movie's way too long for what it needs to be. It's not a very lengthy story either. It's a very simple story. It's Kraven is a hunter. He's hunting down people who are bad, who do crime, which is, again, interesting because that's not the Kraven that we're familiar with in terms of comics and whatever else we know him from. And then his brother gets kidnapped in a very silly way as well, because you don't really understand why it happened. It was someone trying to kidnap Kraven, but then they just took his brother instead. And that's kind of it. And he just now has to find his brother. And every character that kind of tags along is just thrown in there for the sake of being thrown in there. Ariana DeBose's character is playing someone named
Calypso.
Yes, thank you. And she doesn't really have much to do. She's also just kind of thrown in there in the most bizarre way, and you just kind of have to go along with it. Then you have Alessandro Nivola playing the Rhino. Why he's in this movie, what he's doing in this movie also doesn't really make sense. I guess he's just another crime boss that, feels threatened by the Kravinoff family and now wants to get back at them. The motives for a lot of the characters is so paper thin, and it doesn't really make sense as to what this movie is trying to do. And then the performances on top of that are sometimes very hammy and don't belong in the movie, or are what they should be. Like you mentioned, Russell Crowe, who is actually being a Kraven character. And if the movie had this kind of character in it, it would make a lot more sense. And then you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ariana DeBose, who kind of feel like they don't want to be in this movie, and they're just trudging along begrudgingly, just to say, "Hey, let's get this movie done with. Let's have it out." And I feel bad because they've been sitting on this movie for 2 years. I bet they've just wanted to release it and get it over with. There's so much in this movie when it comes down to editing, when it comes down to the special effects as well, that just don't match. Even how Kraven becomes Kraven, it just seems very silly. How his brother becomes the chameleon, also very silly. It's a very messy film that really just doesn't leave an impression or leave a mark, and you can't enjoy it because you feel kind of bored watching it. You have the opening sequence, which is out now on YouTube. You can kind of check it out. Right after that 8 minutes, those 8 minutes end, it then cuts to the origin of Kraven and how he becomes who he is. And it's kind of silly. Like, he gets attacked by a lion while on a safari, and then the lion's blood gets in him, but then Calypso saves him by giving him this magic mystic healing potion. And now he's gained these powers, and these powers are just bizarre. He's just climbing on the walls and he's running really fast, and none of it looks really good because it's very ragdoll CG. And then he has this vision that he can see through things and see really far distances. And the way the director has, shown it on screen, it's almost as if you can't trust the audience to understand that this person has superpowers. So you really have to hit them over the head with it and make them look at, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what he's seeing. When you should trust the audience and let us know that, like, no, we get it. We get that he has these superpowers. We don't need to have him zoom in with his eyes with this yellow haze around it. Like, it just felt very forced. And again, I think the biggest crime of this film is it's boring. It's very slow. It takes way too long for anything to happen. You're just kind of waiting there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of yawning for me. I thought, like, how can this is Kraven? Like, this guy is supposed to be, a character that's designed around, like, actions designed around him. He is supposed to be a character who hunts. He didn't really feel like he was hunting. There are sequences, and there are really brutal sequences when it comes to how he takes care of some of these bad guys, but it never fits the character that's presented in front of us, because Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's so nice. Like, he's just a nice dude. He doesn't have the demeanor of Kraven. So when he does, rip someone in half, it doesn't fit that person, that personality. And then you have the story that's just a mumble jumble of things, and you are just don't know what to do with it. And I got so confused. I'm like, what is actually happening here? Who is the main antagonist? Is it Rhino? Is this assassin, the foreigner who they throw in?
Right, which we didn't even talk about, played by Christopher Abbott.
Is it his father? Like, there are so many things in here in this movie. Like, clearly the vision was not there for this movie. And then you have visual effects that don't work. ADR sequences. So when you combine all these things, you get poor narrative, poor visual effects, poor
storytelling,
and audio. You could just see it, and it's just like, oh, this movie is such a mess. How can we have this out? How is this taking up the IMAX screen at our theater? Because right now, Interstellar is not playing in IMAX because this Kraven's going to be playing in IMAX, and I'm a little annoyed because I didn't get to watch the 70mm IMAX version. And I'm like, please remove this and put Interstellar back on. But yeah, man, like, what this movie is pretty much what it is. What you see is what you get. It's just a poor film.
And we heard rumblings today. Again, I think it's confirmed that this is basically going to be the end of the Sony cinematic universe of Marvel characters. And I understand. I kind of get why that would be the case. Financially, these films have not been a success for them, and critically, they've definitely not been a success either. Madam Web, when we started the movie this year, like it got dragged when it comes to its reactions, its reviews. And I don't know, when we watched it, we had a fun time watching it, but we were also aware that, yeah, it maybe isn't the greatest film, but we had fun watching it. And I think what upset me most about Kraven is I couldn't have fun watching it because the movie thought it was being serious about it. I think it thought it was trying to do something. And maybe there is a movie in there within all the shooting and all the work that they've done, because clearly no one sets out to make a bad film. Maybe there's a movie in there that was really good and really worked, and through editing and through production hell, it just didn't turn out to be what it wanted to be. Because you're right, there's way too many villains. They don't need to exist, really. Ariana DeBose's character of Calypso has such silly moments, and it's just how she ties into the film is so forced. It's like we need a love interest, or we need a female character to push this part of the story forward. She really interacts with nobody else other than Kraven. So it almost feels like maybe she's part of reshoots. It's such a bizarre movie, and I think I'm just feeling so much more perplexed after watching it, where I'm like, I know you guys didn't want to make a movie like this, but why did it become a movie like this? Is it to hold rights? Is there something else legally behind this? It just feels like a lot, and it just never felt fun. And I think when I go watch a movie, whether it's bad or good or whatever, I just want to have fun at least. And you have a fantastic cast in this movie. It's funny because right now Aaron Taylor Johnson and Fred Hechinger, and I guess in a way Russell Crowe, have two films out there right now. Well, or Aaron Taylor Johnson will be having a movie coming out very soon that are going to do. One is going to do really well, and one is already doing really well, with Gladiator 2 and Nosferatu coming out very soon. It's strange, but I am glad that if this is the end of the Sony Cinematic Universe, I'm glad that it's ending here, because I think you just need a better team behind it. You need people that understand these characters, that want to make good movies, because I'm sure Sony wants to make good superhero movies. They want to honor the fans correctly. But this isn't it. This didn't work out the way they wanted to. I think they knew that it wasn't going to work out they wanted to, the way that they delayed it. But I think I had a little bit of hope, and I know you did too, Anthony, that all these delays must mean that they're trying to piece something together that's cohesive and that makes sense, and that, is going to address the reason for all these movies, because you have a string of misses. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, that's why when we talk about people who care about films, that's why James Gunn, when he makes a movie, he knows these characters. He grew up with these characters. That's why the movies he makes are great. That's why his Creature Commandos is fantastic right now. And that's his first introduction to DC Studios. So when you have someone who doesn't really know about the character, or maybe he thinks he does, but he glances over it and he's like, well, I'll give it the studio treatment, and producers and executives want to tell the story, it comes out like this. That's why you have, Morbius, this is Madam Web, the last two Venoms, and maybe Venom itself, the first one, they're just not good. And a big part of this film that's missing is Spider-Man. Without Spider-Man, these villains mean nothing. The villains need Spider-Man. Their story is told through his story. Without his rogue gallery, that doesn't make sense to do these individual films. They're boring. Like, we were talking, like, what would be the next story for Kraven? Is he gonna go fight more hunters? It doesn't have that substance of they are all hunting Spider-Man. They are all wanting to beat down Spider-Man. That's missing. And if you don't have that, you don't have these characters, unfortunately.
Because these characters, like you're saying, they do have depth to them, but their depth also relies on having Spider-Man as that combatant, as that foil to their story. Because Kraven being this anti-hero in this movie and really helping people out, it feels unnecessary, and it
goes against what we know.
And goes against what we know about this character. And again, it just keeps going, and you wonder, when you don't have much of a story for the first film, how could you possibly have a story for a second film or a third film or whatever you wanted to do? And then there are a lot of moments in this movie as well that the audience was like laughing at, and wasn't intentional. It was just silly dialogue or really bizarre line choices or off the cuff acting. There's a moment with is it the Alessandro moment that you're talking about?
Well, no, I was
The
going to say the
perfume moment too. Well,
The perfume.
that was
Okay, no,
actually funny.
you do the Alessandro
So
Nivola.
yeah, like someone just walks in the room and is like, Kraven's still alive, and he just grips the table like, and it's just so.
It's so random. He never does it again.
Just never does it again. And he's kind of like an eccentric character, but it doesn't work. And the audience, like, there was an uncomfortable laughter that happened, and we're like, okay.
Oh man, his
sure.
rhino, like the way
It
his
didn't
rhino.
look good. Oh,
it's like, I have poor eczema, and it's just if I don't wear this pack, I'm gonna I'll become all scaly and hard and then grow a horn and all of a sudden it's just like the rhino is like the size of the Hulk. Like that's who he is. I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense to you, but that's who he is. That's what he should be on screen. It's like taking the Juggernaut and making him 2 feet tall. Like that's not gonna work.
There's even a weird moment where Fred Hechinger towards the end of the film is trying to show that he's the chameleon now, and Fred is a lot smaller of a person than Aaron Taylor Johnson. So he tries to imitate Aaron by turning into him, but just his head. So he just looks like a really tiny Aaron Taylor Johnson with a massive head. And the audience just started laughing when it was meant to be a serious moment. Like, you wonder, like, how did these things get past editing? How did these things even get approval? I just think at a certain point, people were just like, we just got to push this movie out.
Yeah, like you needed someone as tall as Aaron Taylor and maybe a little bit bulkier just to you need that because Fred he's a smaller dude. He's a skinnier dude. So when you play when you see that sequence happening, you're just like, oh, that doesn't look good. That looks weird. Like I can't ever see the chameleon be a chameleon if he looks like that just by playing. Like how would he play Kraven? Like how would he pretend to be Kraven?
It was one of those moments that right when it happened, I think we were all kind of collectively like, that's going to end up on Twitter. Like that's going to be the clip that circulates around.
Yeah.
Because it's even Aaron Taylor Johnson's reaction of him being like, oh, that's so silly that you're like, oh, that's how I felt when I saw it too.
Silly movie, man. This movie's a silly movie. It's not a serious movie.
Let's get to our final recommendation. Anthony, please kick us off with your final recommendation for Kraven the Hunter.
I think it's a must watch. It's a real gem, man. This is a real gem. This is Best movie of the year, Academy Award, Best Picture. No, I'm just joking. I'm gonna say we're gonna Ghostland it. Ghostland.
It's been a while
if you're new to what Ghostland is, it's basically you just send it to die and never exist again.
You know what, man? I'm right there with you. This is I truly wish I could have said this is a movie that you can go and enjoy and have a good time with. Even like ironically watch it, because there are movies that just are fun to watch that aren't great. But this movie, it commits so many issues and it never pays tribute to the actual performances that it needs to have. And it does such a disservice to the character that, you gotta never see this movie again. And I'm so sorry to say that. But hey, if you did enjoy this movie, let us know what you thought, because we want to know what do you think that we missed? What do you think that we didn't kind of get right? And you can join our Discord. You can write in the comments below. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you can leave a comment there as well. We'd love to know, because hey, again, people make movies that they don't intend to be bad. So this might hit a chord with somebody. And if that someone is you, we're always here to listen. Of course, with the movie podcast, you can check our show notes down below for all that information, where you can follow us, where you can subscribe to us. Like goes a long way, and subscription goes a long way as well, and keeps these lights on and our mics as well. So we really appreciate it. Again, huge shout out to our friends over at Sony Pictures Canada for inviting us to come watch this movie. Again, that was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.